Well, hello. This is Electro from Electronauts Records, and with us today we have one of our more prolific artists, I would say, in the record label, Louie Jenga. Welcome. How are you?
Thank you. I am very good indeed. I'm feeling I'm feeling a little iffy, a little 50-50 on the interview, but we'll see how this goes. We're just gonna roll with it and see what comes out.
Oh, I appreciate that. So let's just start a little bit at the beginning.
Yes.
What got you originally into music, into production, into engineering, and all that?
Well, for that we're going back about, I would say, 14 years. I think it's pretty crazy, but the now husband of my sister used to make music back in the day, and essentially I I like wait, that's not how that started. I um I think I at some point actually wanted to kind of see what it was like to make some music, see if it worked, because I was just curious, basically, and I downloaded a demo version of Fruity Loop Studio, as it was called back in the day, and I booted it up, tried a couple things out, and then it's at that point. I think I just kind of started doing it more and more because I kind of enjoyed getting like this uh, fresh, fresh sound that people didn't really hear too much of back in the day, or maybe something that people didn't do too much back in the day. And so at some point, I just kind of started doing it more and more, and made it like my whole thing. And I still enjoy doing it to this day, 14 years later.
Oh,
It
that's
just kind of
amazing.
started randomly, I
That's
gotta say.
amazing. So you're pretty much self-taught, would you say?
Um, Mostly, yes. Did obviously get a couple of tips and tricks from YouTube and for some friends and stuff, but mostly I've been finding the style that I have and the way of producing by myself. Yes.
All right. Did you ever play any musical instruments or anything like that before?
Um, no, I've never. I mean, I have played some instruments a couple of times, of which a guitar and maybe some fuckery on a piano, which wasn't really anything special. Um, but I haven't really gone through and practiced any instrument playing to really get good with it. All of the instruments that I use digitally, and I add and change digitally.
That's awesome. It's awesome how you really don't need to know how to play some of these instruments with modern software. And as I can see, you're kind of like in your own little room there, not
Yeah.
in a really decked out studio or anything like
Oh, no, no,
that.
no. This is
Um,
literally just my room,
yep.
PC, mic, and that's it.
Hey, that's all you really need to make music these days.
Yeah, really.
So speaking of music, what do you enjoy most about, well, let's say part A, listening to music, and then part B, making your own music?
For listening to music, I would say the best part is as long as you're confident enough, you can just vibe with it wherever you are, and it kind of makes you feel a little better if you're saying like a bit of a down mood or whatever. And in terms of actually making music, I think the best part is that you can literally do anything. You can do anything you want. You can make anything you want. You can make anything sound the way you want, and that's opening up to a lot of, I would say, a lot of freedom and new sounds and a new way of presenting a already existing idea, like I've been doing with my music. Like, say, I don't make, say, dubstep or trap in the traditional way you usually hear on the internet. I kind of make my own flavor to it, and that always sounds a little different.
Yeah, it's like a sandbox, really. You know, you can take
Yes.
that sand, build a castle, or you can, do something completely different with it. Really, with modern software, you can make any sound that you can kind of picture in your head. So, regarding your sound design, how do you approach your sound design, and what tools do you mostly rely on?
How do I approach my sound design? I kind of go off of the idea that off of like certain textures and certain ways that already existing bases sound, and as I work towards getting that basic sound, I find a new sounding bass, and then instead of then going keeping going till I found that like basic bass that I was initially going for. I then take a different path and make something completely wild, and then all of a sudden I try to make something as different as I can. It's kind of weird to explain because all I really do is twist knobs and stop when I have something that I think sounds nice.
Yeah. That's always the most fun thing to do is just twist knobs, push faders, and see what happens, right?
Exactly, yes. And that's how I sometimes get these really strange noises, and I'm like, yes, this is going in.
You're right. So, like when I was in school for production and engineering, one of the biggest pieces of advice I got was there is no real right or wrong to making music or mixing or anything like that. You really just have to develop an opinion about the sound and go for it and just stick to it. Is that how you work? What do you think about that statement or that piece of advice?
I think that's generally pretty correct. Obviously, there are a couple of things that you do want to avoid, or things that are sort of wrong. Like you do want to have something sounding a little clean and not painfully to the ears. But generally, if you can have a track that sounds nice, and at least nice to you, then what is someone else to say that it sounds bad if to you it sounds good? It's right. Generally I would say that statement, yes, I would say that's pretty correct, actually, generally.
So going back to music that you listen to, what are some of your favorite artists, and what artists have influenced what you do today?
I don't listen to a lot of artists specifically. I mostly listen to lots of different genres, of which I find artists that make something that I enjoy the most of that genre. But so I wouldn't really say that there is like a specific artist that I continuously listen to, but an artist that I think has helped with improving my style and finding what I really like has to be Eliminate. I think like his semi wonky style and really different sounding tracks is something that I picked up on, and I actually really liked, and I think unconsciously adapted into my own stuff. So I think mostly the inspiration comes from Eliminate.
Okay, that's awesome. I'll have to check them out a little bit.
Definitely.
So, along that, I guess you kind of talked about this, but what are your favorite genres to both listen to and make? Do you like to explore different genres, or do you kind of like to stick into one area for a little while? How does that thought process work?
So for general everyday listening, I would say either lo-fi music, because it's really just calm background music. You can put it up anywhere and listen to it without really having to pay attention to it. Or maybe if I'm in the car or during work, I mostly listen to like more classic songs, I think, like the 70s, 80s types of stuff. Because
classic rock.
Yeah, I think like the rockish, rock and rollish type of stuff, like the really popular, maybe disco-y, anything from the 80s, really, as long as it's not classical.
80s are coming back real strong right now.
Definitely.
Yeah, it seemed like maybe a decade ago it was like the 70s sound was starting to kind of be evolved and came back, and now it seems like the 80s sound is kind of what's dominating the pop charts right now. So
yeah, I think that if you think about it, that's really happening with like songs you find on the radio, because there's something on in those tracks that has like the same sort of style, or maybe not really structure, but generally the same sort of style that 80s music has, with like basic drums, synthy sort of instruments playing. I think that's pretty correct. Yeah, the 80s stuff is definitely coming back in some sort of way.
Right, and that's kind of the advent of when drum machines kind of really became more popular. More synths became used in music that you would normally hear on the radio, and that kind of popularized that stuff and made it like okay. Before it was a lot of like, you got to play a real guitar, you got to play real drums if you want to be on the radio. And it was kind of that 80s time where it kind of shifted a little bit. And now, now we got Billie Eilish just making Grammy award-winning records in her bedroom,
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's kind of crazy if you think about it. Yeah.
So with that, I want to transition and let's take a listen to one of your songs. You sent me this Billy Bust Up song. Anything you want to say about it before we listen to maybe 20, 30 seconds of it?
Well, as of this video, probably it's not released yet, and maybe it won't be too long until it's released. But otherwise, it's a genre I don't really do that often, but I do enjoy listening to.
Awesome.
It's a little different, I would say. There's nothing much to it.
Okay.
So let's have a gander.
So let's take a listen. This is I've Had Enough of You remix by Louie Jenga.
I've had enough of you. I've had enough of you. I've had enough of you.
There we go.
I've had enough of you. 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 Nothing but a thorn in my side since day one. But I am from Tokyo, the great, and I'll not be outdone.
I like this. I like it, man. And we were kind of come up to like a little bit of drop there. I don't want to give away too much of this.
Oh, that's fine.
You'll have to tune in to Louie Jenga's channel if you want to hear the rest of that song. But going along with these songs, how do you craft your music? How do you design a sound? What sort of instruments or I guess plugins are kind of your go-tos, and also how do you make your vocals?
Right. So the way I usually go about making a song is to get a general idea out of what I want to do. I start with the drop, which I don't think is a very conventional way of going about things, but because I usually, when I start a new project, I don't really have a general idea of what I want to do. I just kind of plop things down, pick and choose between a couple of different drums until I find a rhythm or a sort of beat that I like, and then go step by step from there, really. And even when I do have like a sort of finished drop sort of thing, I can still change it up completely and have it be a completely different genre. So if I do make something that of which I don't have an idea of what I want it to sound like, I really just kind of go with the flow and go with what I'm feeling at that current moment in time.
So are you more the type to, just jump in the sandbox without any ideas and just play around and see what happens? Or are you the one to say, hey, I want to sound like this song and I want a really groovy bass line, and then go off that?
Yeah, I'm definitely the first kind. I just jump in the sandbox and get my little shovel and my little bucket and then I shovel away until I find something nice.
Okay, so
and I just go on from there.
So that shovel and bucket are kind of like your tools, right? What would you say are your go-to tools for making your music?
For sound design, definitely a plugin called Vital. It's a free version of a plugin called Serum, which is usually used for general sound design, really, for heavy basses such as dubstep and that sort of thing, or maybe interesting leads. Or Vital is like a free version of Serum, and for me, it sounds a little different in terms of what you get out of it, but that's what I like about it, because it's not the conventional thing to use. It's like it is sort of conventional, but it's a slightly different iteration of the conventional thing. But apart from that, I would say if I want to make this thing sound a little fatter or compress things a little bit more, generally I use OTT to compress. Maybe not like all the way, because then it sounds like shit. But I usually use it not partially. I use it with the knob turned like halfway, so I could half of the full compression, and that would sound stupid.
Okay, so OTT is a multi-band compressor, right?
Yes, an OTT literally is, it should be a multi-band compressor. It literally stands for over the top compression. So it takes compression, shoves it over the top, and then I kind of pull it back just a little bit.
Okay. So speaking of compression, that was one of the harder things for me to learn, I guess, when making music, and it's really hard to kind of describe and to teach someone. How would you define compression? How do you use it in your tracks? Is it hard for you to do? Is it something that just comes easy to you? Yeah, this is a hard one.
I would say it's generally not too hard for me to use. It's not because I know all about compression or that sort of thing, but because I kind of go by ear and go off of what already existing tracks in that certain genre sound like and have their compression be like. So I kind of the best way that I can go about it is to over compress first and then turn it down until you have a nicely compressed instrument without the compression being too in the background. Pretty much, you want to do it over the top and then turn it back a little bit, really.
Yeah, that's a good piece of advice right there, actually. Basically, you could apply that to almost any sound effect or reverb, distortion, whatever. Just go full, go 100%, and then dial it back till you find kind of that Goldilocks zone. Yeah.
Yeah, and definitely also don't. At least that's what works for me. Is don't just have that specific instrument play solo, but also have it play with all of the other instruments that you're using, because if you turn it up and down with all of the instruments playing, you get a sense of what the compression sounds like in the full thing, instead of being like, yeah, this compression sounds good and this instrument's on its own, and then you play everything else and it sounds like crap. Yep. You want to do both and not just focus on like the solo instrument. You want to get the full picture, really.
Yeah, that's always going to be one that's very hard to do in the mixing stage.
Definitely. Yes.
Okay, so we heard a little bit of your music earlier. What would you say is your favorite track that you've ever produced? That maybe something you've worked on with somebody else, or something you've done all by yourself, or a remix?
See, it's mostly, I would say they are tracks that I've done myself, not because I don't like the collabs I did with other people, because I do like them when I do them, but I think I think if I had to really pick one, I think it's my track Giza, because that's really a hard-hitting Egyptian instrument sounding using track, which is a perfect combination, because I like a kick that slams and I like Egyptian instruments.
Okay, so let's listen to a little bit of that one. Here, I'll show the video even. There's a kick.
Right? Shit.
Dang. Making my heart like, ooh, boom, boom,
right?
Ooh,
like,
that's a good one.
That is, yeah, that thing bangs.
So what was your, when you made that song, is that what you kind of were trying to create, or is that just what happened?
I think partially that is kind of what happened, but that was also something I had in my head because I did it way back in the day as well, when I still have my alias The Lost Soul back on SoundCloud and that sort of thing. I used to do it a couple of times back then as well, but so I kind of wanted to go back to those roots just a little bit and modernize it, or make it the way I do it today, and that's pretty much how Giza worked out. And I experimented with my vocals on that. Everything in the intro is actually my voice in terms of actual vocals. Obviously, not the instruments, because I'm not that good.
Yeah, so no sound effects or no vocal effects, really. Just minor stuff.
I mean, obviously there are vocal effects, but there aren't really any pre-made vocal loops or choirs or that sort of thing. All of the vocals in the intro are coming from this throat right here.
So speaking of that, are you the type of producer to take samples that you hear and turn them into songs? Do you make your own samples? Do you make your own entire compositions? Do you borrow from here, borrow from there, tweak it?
Well, I do use samples from other people, but something I try to avoid to use as much as possible to maintain my originality is to not use pre-made sequences and loops. Because if you grab like a pre-made snare loop to use in the build-up or something, then you can just slap it in there and be done with it. No. We're not doing that. We are making that loop ourselves.
Right. I'm kind of the same mind there. If I have all these instruments and all this technology, why am I taking somebody else's loop and calling it my music or whatever?
Yeah.
I prefer
used
to come
to
from
do
here.
that back in the day, and it was very obvious as well. But that's what got me. That's what got me plays back in the day, even a little bit of popularity somehow. And but over the years, I've tried more and more to make my own stuff. And sure, that sounded like shit at first, but I can prove that if you continue to try and make your own stuff and maybe use a couple of tips and tricks and examples from other people, and then make your own twist on it, you can be original even after 8 or so years that your unoriginal stuff has aired.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I like that. So along with that, what kind of advice would you like to give to aspiring musicians, aspiring producers who are, just starting their musical careers?
Right. So I'm going to try to stay as neutral as possible. I would say it's fine to take inspiration off of other people. That's actually advised, because that's how you can kind of find out what you want to be aiming for in terms of sound, but you don't want to specifically go for that. You want to use it as a guideline. You want to, like, say a song sounds in terms of mix, it sounds like a certain way. You want to try to even if it's by help of a couple of tutorials, you want to try to have your spin on the sound quality and sound usage of other people. So don't directly rip from other people, because that's obviously that's not good. But it also leaves you to be unoriginal, and I don't want to say boring, but you don't really stand out that way. Like you just become one of them pretty much, which can be fine, but it's better to be original than to be lost in the sea of seashells and not be the crab in them, like that sort of thing.
I like that. Kind of going off that, now we, in the past year or 2, 3, maybe, we've seen a lot of AI, artificial intelligence, being used to create music, create vocals, create lyrics. As a creative, myself, I hate it. It's stealing music and money from my own wallet. But at the same time, I have started to see that you can use AI as like another tool in your toolbox, I'll say. You can use it a little bit to kind of try to capture what you're thinking if you can't quite flesh something out. And now, of course, I was just experimenting with Logic Pro 11 yesterday, and they introduced a lot of new AI session musicians, they call them, where you can basically just create an AI-based bass line or keyboards or drummers. It's easy to kind of start a track that way and use that as a tool. But now we're seeing this AI stuff in our preferred DAWs, which is what Logic is, which is what FL Studio is. What is your take kind of on the AI invasion?
Right. So, I personally don't like AI either. I am definitely against it, but there are uses for it, like you mentioned. If you really insist on using AI as like a thing for your music, either do it for fun with a couple of vocals and make some make some dumb shit out of it for the memes, pretty much, or
for a laugh.
Or use it as a guideline, as like a sort of idea box to grab an idea from and be like, hey, yeah, this is the sort of thing that I like. Let me try this with my own stuff. Because there's an artist. I don't know if you already stopped, but there was an artist called Lucio Grimard, which we found out he started using an AI to generate music, because that's literally all you do. Put it up on YouTube and call it their own shit. Don't do that, because if you want to piss people off, that's the way you piss people off. Let me tell you.
Yeah, that's painful to even hear about.
Don't do that,
kids.
Did not last long.
Do not do that at home.
Oh, shit.
Okay,
Man.
So I see that you're, like I said in our intro, you're one of the more prolific releasers of music on the label. Almost every week it seems like you have something new out. What else do you like to do with your time besides, jumping in the sandbox and making music?
Well, besides that, I do try to have some free time. I do like to go to take my friend and go through like the city center, and maybe go through a couple of shops, or go to like another city. Like a couple of days ago, I went with a friend and their mom and little sister to a different city. We took a stroll through a forest and did some really outside activities, and I do definitely like doing that. But I don't really get the chance to do that too much, because one, I don't really want to do it on my own, and two, I need to have a friend to actually have time for that.
Yeah.
And I have work, obviously. So I do try to space out my time a little bit, and other than that, if I am on my PC, either I'm watching the videos, maybe playing a couple of games, or editing a video for my friends over at Unicast Radio. Definitely go check them out, by the way. Definitely not a plug. Check them out.
All right. Unicast Radio, everybody. Check them out.
Definitely do so. But generally, besides making music, I just kind of want to have other things to do. It's outside gaming, any of the sort of stuff that other men do.
Yeah, you can't really trap yourself in the music studio every day, all day. You got to get out there and, walk through nature. And sometimes I feel that's where I can get some inspiration on some things. So definitely, if you are one of those types to just make music all day and just hammer at it and work your butt off, maybe think about taking a break here and there and, touching some grass and meeting some new people, seeing other sites, going to different cities, like you said, because that kind of stuff will invade your music a little bit. It will give you more ideas, make you more creative.
Yeah, and it freshens you up a little bit, really.
Yeah.
And if you're on music all day, every day, you get burnt out really fast. And that's something you don't want. You don't want to go for quantity over quality. You want to go for quality over quantity.
Right.
And the only reason I've been really been posting this much lately is because I had a huge ass backlog, which is still going.
Oh yeah.
and I'm still just kind of making music here and there, just kind of working on my project. And when I finish one, I add them to the backlog and schedule them for a couple days after the last one. So.
Oh man, the backlog of music from musicians is I assume you're like me, where you have hundreds and hundreds of started songs and songs that you got to finish, or maybe you'll never finish. But how do you decide which song to come back to, which song is junk, I guess you could say?
How
do you prioritize that?
Right. So essentially, what I do is if I open up my DAW and I take a look at the projects that I have got going, I kind of open most of them, of which I maybe have forgotten what they sound like, or or which I'm like, let's revisit that. Maybe I can now get something out of it that I like.
Sure.
And other than that, if I really haven't clicked on a project a long time and I'm like, yeah, I don't really feel that anymore, it just goes out the window, and I maybe just start a new one, or at least try to finish some of the older ones if at all possible. It's really just kind of pick and choose, not really specifically because of what the project sounds like. Sometimes it is because I'm then excited to work on a project, but other than that, it's mostly just kind of pick and choose until I find a project that I like to return to and really finish and get the idea out.
Okay, well, there you go. That was Louie Jenga talking about his music, how he makes music, his influences. Thank you very much for being a part of Electronauts Records. We certainly appreciate you having you in our server. You're always there to give helpful tips and advice to newbies and other, people who are just kind of starting out, or even people who have been doing it their whole life that, need to be reminded of some things. So I certainly appreciate that. Love what you're doing with your music, coming out so regularly. So stay on that.
Definitely will. Thank you.
Anything else you'd like to wrap up the interview with? Anything you want to plug besides Unicat Radio? And we got your song, that remix, Billy Bust Up's remix, coming up.
Definitely. Go check that out. If you only just found about me now, don't just check out only my recent stuff, but also go through a couple of the older ones. Not only because you can then see what I've been making in the past and how I've improved, but also because you might find a track that that might be a little older, but still fits the type of genres and stuff you listen to nicely. And I don't think a lot of people do that. They only really look at the new stuff. I feel like, so definitely go check out my older stuff too. And I know, it's definitely been great being in the serve as well. Not only because I'm being accepted there for the genres that I make and, for the person that I am, but also because it's just a nice community of people who work together and show their own stuff and don't just hate on other people's shit.
Yeah.
That's
you got to work together in this whole thing. We're all in the same team, and I think that kind of gets lost sometimes. So I've got your YouTube channel up here. Subscribe, like all of his stuff. It's at Louie Jenga is his YouTube. If you are interested in joining our server, you can do that through the website electronauts.inc.com, or you can find us on Discord. I'll put a little link probably down there. Yeah, do some post link
somewhere over there.
So we'll have a link to the Discord server if you'd like to join us and talk a little bit about your music, share your music, get some feedback, anything like that. I do hope to interview other artists that are on our label, and I do really appreciate you kind of taking this head on, being the first one to kind of let your guard down a little bit and be interviewed about what you're really good at. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your music, and let's stay tuned. We hopefully will have more interviews with other artists, but this has been Louie Jenga. I am Electro from Electronauts Records, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot, Louie.
Thank you too.